Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Great Awakening Generator. I am your host, Rose, and we are doing the Dr. Darag Speaks Series. Welcome, Darag. How are you?
I'm actually a little bit tired today, but I'm generally good. It's another beautiful day.
That's right.
I did drop a big gum tree the other day, a dead gum, and I've been sawing it up and chopping it up and carting it into the house.
Okay, so you've got a fireplace and you're using your gum tree for the fireplace. Is that what that means?
Yeah, it's a mix of pine and gum.
Oh, nice. Lovely. Lovely.
Really,
Sounds wonderful. But
it
it's
is.
obviously made you a bit tired because you've had to do all that manual graft.
Yeah, and I was doing some bike sprints up the hill because I thought I might be going skiing this weekend.
Okay.
But I haven't really done much leg work, so I wanted to not wreck my legs on the first day. But the weather's not looking that good.
So you may not go skiing.
No.
Yeah. Yes. Where would you ski?
Rupehu.
Okay, right. So you're going to take the trip down to Rupehu.
Yeah, we've got family life memberships which we're just about to lose because they've gone into bankruptcy with the last year's bad season and 2 years of being on lockdown.
Shame.
Yeah.
There's so much of that happening at the moment, isn't it? Lots of people
there is, yeah.
having to revamp and think about what they're going to do, and a lot of businesses are closing because that's just not the way to go forward anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, the age of Aquarius is certainly kicking in, dare I say. But yeah, it feels quite volatile at the moment. So
it is, and especially we got coming up to elections, aren't we?
We are coming up to elections, and yeah, an interesting time. You can start to see and feel how things are closing down. Some things are just sort of stagnating or quietening down, maybe is a better word, because people are focusing on the elections.
Yeah.
So, are you doing some work for the elections?
Am I doing some work for it? Well, I'm just trying to find out what would be the best team to vote for, really.
Okay. No, I just thought you might be doing something like supporting the voters and giving information or something like that. You know how people do this. Yeah.
Well, I have been looking at helping NZ Loyal, and
yes,
that's the main party that I like. I can agree with their policies.
Okay.
I have no argument about any of their policies at all. But it's whether we can get enough of enough people to stand up and vote for that. And it's a big question mark. There is that, I don't know if you want to sidetrack here, but there is that Voters United where they're trying to look at which of the smaller parties would be the one for us all to move to. But if there's only like 5,000 people voting in Voters United, then that means nothing. So we need to know that there's solid amounts of people doing that.
That's right. We are quite we are at quite a crucial time in our lives, in our lives, or in New Zealand politics, I would say.
Yeah.
What we do now, and we have to lift ourselves up from any kind of isolation, for want of a better word, that we want to take from or segregation that we want to take from the elections, because I think we need to be involved. If we want a better way forward, we need to be a part of it, right?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. And for me, it's always about standing for what's true. And
that's right.
Partly what this whole session is about.
Yes.
We've into. And it's, and I'm glad at least there's a party that's voicing all the issues, and whether they make it past the post or not, the fact that they're out there talking about it means that more people will wake up to them.
Yeah, she kind of made me stop and think, Liz Gunn. I watched the initial videos that were put out of her talking to, getting a message across, and I thought, definitely going to watch that and see how that unfolds over the next few weeks, because I'm interested in that. I'm certainly voting this year. There's going to be no doubt about it. And so now, speaking of voting, and I was like, when I said I'm certainly voting this year, sounds like I've got a bee in my bonnet, doesn't it?
Well, we all should have bees in our bonnets.
So, and that brings us to today's topic, which is anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're talking about anger, and it's the last of the 7 aspects, isn't it? That we've been talking
Well,
about.
no, we've gone a sidetrack. So we didn't do the 7 aspects one at a time. We got to about 3, and then we chunked that down into the core emotions.
Yes.
But we're still in that piece there.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Sorry, I need a map for that now, because it's like too much happening, too much in the mind space.
Yeah, well, you've got lots of things going on. People
Oh,
you talk.
we all have. We all have,
Yeah.
but because I talk to so many people, I have to think twice about what did we talk about the last time? You
Yeah.
know, anyway, yes. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully this this recess that we're planning to take, which we will tell everybody about at the end for the next few weeks, will sort of refresh us both. And we come back and I'll remember some of the things I'm supposed to remember. You know, and I think it's kind of apt because I feel like the Mercury retrograde is also calling us to it, calling us into a time of self-reflection, because retrogrades are positive things too, you know, not just negative things. All right, let's go to anger. Why? So tell us first, introduce this topic to us, and then I can ask some questions.
Well, I think anger is one of the emotions we have the most trouble with. You know, a lot of us are happy being scared or feeling guilty. And there's a small percentage of people that are really comfortable being angry. And most people are afraid of it. And the main reason we're afraid of it is we've seen the damage it can be caused by it.
Yes.
You know, people can actually physically hurt each other, or you know, just say things that are just, you know, more. They used to have that thing that sticks and stones can break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And we all knew that was BS, you know. So, words can cut to the core.
They absolutely can.
And
yes,
yeah,
skyly for the rest of your life.
absolutely. And if you let them, but it is that you have to not let them, and you have to work on it. But at the same time, you know, if you're in a rage, you'd say and do things you wouldn't otherwise do. And the main problem I see with anger is not anger itself, it's our relationship to anger. That we don't feel comfortable with it. Because you know, most of us never got taught. When we were bringing up our kids, we were working with how to talk so kids will listen, and how to listen so kids will talk. A couple of ladies, Adele Faber and Elaine Masleach, I think. And they were fantastic books. And it's like, when we were going through that book, and we used to teach parents that course, and it's like, gosh, I wish I could just imagine what it would have been like if my own parents had talked to me like that.
Yes.
And just to allow us to be able to feel and express and get to know, because if anger is happening, it's because there's something important that you want that's not happening.
Yes.
So it's really about recognizing that anger is a serious message, that there's something important going on and we need to get a handle on it. And that's where that whole process of, you know, we tend to call anger a negative emotion. And I'm always into that realm of saying, well, emotions have a spectrum.
Yes.
From negative to positive. And so what I liken to call anger, I talked about the big M mind and the small M mind in the past of the series, where the big M mind is that part that's connected to the infinite, to the consciousness that we all are, and wants only the best for us.
Yeah.
And whereas the small M mind is the one that sees itself as an isolated little scary, you know, scared like mouse-like creature that could get damaged quite easily. So it's very vulnerable. So anger from that point of view, you know, is different to what I would call divine fury, which is just that whole idea. Anger from the small M mind tends to come with, the key indicator is you're blaming somebody. And the main thing you're blaming someone for is how you feel. How dare you make me feel angry?
True. Yeah.
You know, so something has touched inside of us and we feel defensive, and then we launch out an attack because we feel we've been attacked. So we launch one back. And, but you have to have a degree of comfort with anger to even do that. Whereas a lot of people won't even go there. They'll just crawl into their shell.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
someone's angry around them, they'll just crawl into their shell and not put their head out. They don't want to get it cut off. So they're terrified of what that means that someone else is angry. And part of it in terms of a relationship is, one, you need to let yourself be angry, but you also need to let your partner be angry. You know, to let your partner be angry without feeling like it's your fault.
Yes.
You know, that's one thing that I used to, you know, well, one reason that in terms of my relationship with Sally, the main reason I would get angry is if she was asking me to do something, I didn't feel like I could do it. You know, it was like, or answer something. Partly she has this thing because of being a doctor. She thinks I should know everything.
Programming.
Yeah. Tell me, help me out here. And it's like, I would like to be able to help. And so it clicks into my savior kind of routine. And at the same time, if I don't feel like I can, I had to learn to admit that I actually don't know.
Yes.
And I hate that feeling. I just want to know.
Yeah, I wanna. It's important. It's very important to say, just not to digress from it, but it's very important to say, I don't know when you don't know.
Yeah.
I've learned. But
Yeah.
you know, you may not know in that moment, but later on, you could always go and find out and come back. And I say this also because I've had to say I don't know to students, you know, that I do training with. But I always follow through and say, we'll find out about that and we'll come back and give you the answer.
That's exactly.
So I have to ask this though. Why do you think? And I might know the answers, but I just want us to have a flow of the conversation. And I don't know if we're there yet to ask this. Why do you think that expression, like you were talking about expressing anger, and I'm hearing that it's probably a good thing to express anger. So why do you think it's important to be able to express anger? I'll tell you why I'm asking that also. As you're speaking, I'm reflecting on my attitude about anger. I feel like my attitude about anger is that it's a bad thing to be angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really a bad thing. It's low vibration. Anger is a non-godlike, and I'm thinking now this is probably coming from my programming when I was in church. It's very much like, if you're angry, that is not godly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the way to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why is it so important?
Well, it's because anger, if you look at every feeling as a sign of an unmet need. So when you feel angry, there's a need that's not being met, or a want that's not being met. And if you don't acknowledge the anger, then you'll never get to have that need met. And if you ever want to move ahead in a relationship, it is about meeting each other's needs. And knowing that certain needs are important things to have. They actually, the whole evolution of life comes from our development of our needs.
Yeah.
And acknowledging which needs are the ones that need to be honored and which are the ones that you need to deal with internally.
Yeah. Do you think, because I'm thinking about this in terms of relationship, like, because you talked about Sally, and it just makes me think about my relationships, right? So I have a thing where sometimes if someone is angry and they're shouting at me, I will just go into a shell, because I don't, you know, because that's my defense mechanism. And even if I wanted to say something at the time, I won't say it because I feel like, okay, it's pointless to say it now. I also do not want to aggravate that anger, because perhaps if someone's shouting at me, I feel they could get violent with me, and I don't want to have to deal with that. But also, for couples, you know, we say we had a fight, we had an argument, and then it feels bad, but it's necessary because when we are having an argument or a fight, as we call it, we're expressing anger outwardly, maybe even with raised voices, not necessarily, we're not talking about anger that leads to violence or anything, but we're saying, okay, so this is how we express ourselves. What do you think about that? Do you think we need to go through those processes in terms of, like, you know, sometimes the only way we can express our anger is or our thoughts is to express it in angry mode, you know?
No, I think sometimes playing games is useful just to get comfortable with the feeling of being angry. And one thing we used to do is we used to go into we were living in a small house. We had a little hallway, which was the most soundproof area we had.
Yep.
And we would just go in. There was only a small hallway, and we would both stand just a few feet apart, and we would both yell at each other at the same time. And the idea was no physical contact, so you're not tempted to hurt anybody, and the idea wasn't to listen to the other person, but just to yell at each other. And it just broke that idea of anger being something, crazy.
Yes,
And
yes.
it just made it laughable, really.
Yeah,
And but I think that one of the main lessons I used to have to I used to feel like breaking things. So for a while I would break, throw things or break things, and then I realized I was making a mess. And I thought, well, if I really want to, and sometimes I broke things I really want to keep. This is in my 20s. I was learning to just deal with, because I'd always repressed anger. I wouldn't let myself feel it. So I was one of those kind of guys, and so to feel it was scary. And so then I learned after a while I could just break something like a glass that was chipped or something in a bucket that I didn't have to clean up the mess.
Good. That's good.
Yeah, because cleaning up the mess just makes you feel guilty, right? Which is
exactly. I've thrown things, so I understand.
And then it took me. I finally learned to say, just to use the words, I feel angry.
Yes.
And that was such a hard thing to say, because it was like, because I didn't like feeling angry and didn't want to show anger. To actually admit that I felt angry to someone was incredibly vulnerable making.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to do that.
Yeah, and that's actually what anger is about. Is you do feel vulnerable, so it's about acknowledging that, and when you can say what you're angry about, then you can actually start to look at, well, what do I actually want here? And there's usually a want or a need there that isn't being met, whether it's I think most of us feel angry at the government at the moment because they're just lying to us, and we want to be respected. We want to be told the truth. So that's a sense of how we're all, if we're manipulated like that and we're told lies, then what we're actually feeling, we feel anger inside because we want to be respected. And part of respecting me is you tell me the truth.
That's right.
And if you don't tell me the truth, I feel disrespected. I feel vulnerable because you're lying at me. And if you're lying at me, that means something nasty is going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm going to be angry about that. And a lot of us need to get more comfortable with our anger so we can take that position.
Yes.
And Babaji called it. I've got a quote here. He actually said this when I was in the ashram with him in April '82. So it came from a quote from one of the newsletters, and I remember writing it down, so I put it in the book. I'll get to it in a second, but it was all about what he talks about, the misuse of ahimsa. And like I was very much a non-violent kind of person. I know I was offered to go into the Army Corps medical corps when I was in medical school. And I remember struggling with that idea because I just didn't want to be involved with that level of violence. So there was a part of me that was seriously, and I went down the whole yoga path. So Ahimsah, that whole thing of non-violence, where Gandhi supposedly got rid of the British because of that, but I think he was just right place at the right time, really. He, but the whole non-violent protest, which I think you have to do that with protests, but you shouldn't. The whole thing around having not being afraid of the violence of our own feelings. I think that's. Oh, here we go. Finally got it. Feeling angry it's a violent feeling inside.
Yes, absolutely.
You feel like you're a volcano erupting, and so it's about if you can't let that feeling be inside, then you never get to have the fertile soil that comes after it.
Mhm.
When you're expressing an unmet need and getting towards knowing, if a real need that really needs to be met, like respect in a relationship, then you never get to have the fertile soil of having it come through that.
Yes.
And so this is Babaji's quote about non-violence. He says, "I want to make the people who have come here true citizens. I don't want this non-violence. The people preach non-violence, but instead they make water out of their blood. I want to wake up the sense of true humanity. With great difficulty you get this human body. I want brave and courageous people. A person," he said a man, but I'm saying a person, "must have great courage. So many atrocities are done, and people let them happen in the name of non-violence." That's where we say we just won't stand up for things.
Mhm.
And non-violence is not for this. He says, "I do not want people to be blind when they have two eyes in their heads." And it's just that whole thing of realizing that we do need to stand for what's right
Definitely.
and bring that fight back. And the whole idea of being non-violent and being pacifist is used and abused.
Yes.
The Christians, as you mentioned in the beginning, do that. Still some of them apologize for Jesus throwing the tables around with the money changers in the temple.
You
Maybe
just,
he knew
yeah,
something. Maybe he knew something back then.
exactly. And he did the
And was
absolute,
actually-
yeah, in that moment, because
Yeah.
that was an expression of anger, and he did what he felt profoundly at the time in that moment, because that
Yeah.
was what was supposed to be the temple, and all this wheeling and dealing was going on. It was unfair to people with what was going on. So many reasons to be angry about that. A
Yeah.
little bit like how we feel nowadays, but okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the key is to be able to feel it and get to know what you want to be. If you can acknowledge feeling angry, that's a big step.
Yeah.
And then if you can admit that to your close person or just someone you're talking with.
Yep.
And rather than if we notice any blame come out of our mouth, that's small m mind anger coming out. And it's probably not going to lead anywhere.
Yeah.
When you feel a real divine fury inside, and it's a clean, there's a cleanliness to it. It's like a purifying fire.
Yeah.
And it is about standing up for what's real and standing up for injustice. And that has been. Maybe you might have another question there before I move on, because otherwise I'm just moving on here.
Yes, sure, that's okay. So I did have another question.
Yeah.
I was going to say this. To what you were saying, I really like it. I don't know for want of another word, but I feel so much relief when somebody says, I feel really angry about that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when we don't say I feel really angry at that, and we turn and walk away, or we express it without saying our thoughts, there's confusion and misunderstanding about the physical behavior or the silence. But when somebody says I feel really angry at that, I feel really angry, even if someone says I feel really angry that you did that, it's saying you're opening it up for me to talk about it, for us to talk about what have I done, and for you giving me the opportunity to explain myself about something you're angry with. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And my question would be, look, what is your basic position on anger? I can tell already that you feel that it's positive and it's something that we should deal with and that we should acknowledge and be honest about it. So how do you deal with someone else? And I'm bringing it back to now, me saying this about anger and somebody else expressing that to me. How do we deal with somebody with other people who are angry? And I guess it depends on the circumstances and what perspective, because they might be angry and not expressing it, or they might be angry and saying, I feel really angry.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Yeah, well, you can ask me, well, I get the sense you're angry about this.
So you think it's best to ask to not confront it, but acknowledge it?
Yeah.
By asking questions, yeah.
Yeah, and the main way you can do that, because we've talked about fear and guilt, and the main reason we don't address anger and don't like people being angry is because we feel afraid and guilty.
Yes.
And it's, if we can get to the point when someone else is feeling angry, my main position is go to a position of innocence and safety. So if I can get that it's safe to feel vulnerable, that's a classic thing, is we don't feel safe feeling vulnerable. And so when someone's angry, that's very vulnerable making. So it's about acknowledging our own relationship to vulnerability and realizing, no, we can actually feel safe feeling vulnerable.
Yes. Yes.
The two things aren't opposed to each other.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel vulnerable, and letting myself know that, and then that I'm innocent. And if I've done something wrong, I'm innocent from the perspective of if I've actually screwed up in the communication, I'm willing to admit it from a position of fundamental innocence.
Yes.
I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and be genuine about it. Because
absolutely.
I think people can tell if a person does it from a non-genuine platform, then somebody's being that way. They just, I don't know, maybe trying to behave like they're genuine, or they really care about your thoughts and feelings. So doing it means being genuine with it. Yeah.
And then it's about giving them the time and space to share what they're sharing. And if they don't get to the need or want, to actually ask them.
Yeah.
Well, what is it that would help here? Or
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of understanding in this.
Yeah, not in the sense of, what can I do, but to help you, but more a sense of what do you need right now?
That's right.
What do you want?
Yeah, because I mean, we can't, quite often when somebody's feeling like that, we can reach out in terms of what do you need, because you might say, how can I help you? But maybe that help is not necessary. Maybe it's because we're not actually it's not helping them. By helping them, we're not giving them the opportunity to maybe grow in that experience. By saying, what do you need right now? Because maybe they don't want to, the angry feeling hasn't gone away. They just need they might need time and space to sort of absorb and think about their thoughts themselves before they say, what I need.
Yeah. And that might be part of the solution, is I just need a few minutes, I need to go for a walk, and then, but it needs to, when they come back, they need to be willing to share what I'm angry about, because the reason to go for a walk is to figure out what you actually really want and what's happening, the situation that's happening. It's not to walk away and not come back. And Sally and I have a key word we call it blah. So if we've been mad at each other, at a certain point, if we're actually willing to get back together again, in terms of being soft and cuddly with each other, then we just use the word blah. We haven't had to use that. We use that quite a bit in the beginning. When you get in a relationship, you go through all those teething problems.
Yes.
And we developed that, just a word. It could be any word, but we found the word blah worked for us. That just that blah blah blah. And so when we couldn't quite communicate, but we know there was a lot of angst going on down between us, one of us would get to the point of just saying, okay, I'm ready, blah. And then if the other one said blah, then we could connect again. If the other one didn't, then there was still more time to go.
It's so simple, funny, but still effective, very clearly.
Yeah, it really worked for us.
Yeah. I think it's really important to have simple things like that bring fun. Maybe you didn't even think of it as bringing fun into the relationship, but when you reflect on it now, it certainly did.
Yeah, and it was about bringing the fun back, just because you do that. You get off your high horses on it with each other, and you get on your different hobby horses and camps, and at a certain point, you just got to get off the horse.
Wow. It has to be a strong relationship, I think, in terms of saying, yeah, okay, acknowledging it and coming to that point and saying, this is how we're going to handle this. That's healthy, right? It's healthy. So anger is healthy, but having healthy conversation about how you're going to navigate it when it turns up seems to be a thing that's necessary because, well, I say this because sometimes I know for myself, I can't seem to cross that boundary, or not boundary, but I can't seem to cross over to the other side with somebody to have a healthy discussion about something that without having anger in it. And that's not because I have anger, but because perhaps I'm not receiving it from it. You have to be on the same wavelength, do you think, is what I'm asking, in terms of how you're going to manage it?
I think there needs to be a certain level of commitment to each other, you know,
Yes.
in a relation. So I notice, you know, since I've had a few COVID arguments with some dear friends of ours, and I noticed I was putting a bit too much pressure on them, thinking if I can't help them see what's going on, then we're really lost. So I was putting a lot of weight on them, and at the same time, just, you know, that frustration of people not being able to see what I can see is, and it's so obvious, and I think I get a bit impatient, and so in relationships like that, we haven't got that same level of, because we're not in proximity all the time, like in a marriage, you're living together, so you can't, because the proximity is not there all the time. You don't have that same commitment, so it can explode relationships quite badly. So
right.
not everyone is really, like, I was thinking about this in terms of when I went to spend time with Babaji, I was thinking that he was going to be enlightened guru, all peace and light and love all the time. And he was anything but. He was every emotion under the sun, but he spent a lot of the time furious, you know, yelling at people and whacking people, and it's like, but out in the public, when he's in his ashram, he's like that. But when he's out in the public, he has a different persona in a sense. He's more like, and I think that's because it needs to be a really deep level of friendship for you, and commitment to the friendship, for you to be able to be furious with each other and work through it.
Yes.
When you're
Yes.
in a relationship like with like marriage, then you know you're committed, and that commitment is an important thing because it helps you address things that you wouldn't otherwise address with.
Yes.
You know, move
Yeah.
it from relationship to relationship, and same patterns come up,
Yeah.
and you never deal with it. Whereas if you know that you're in this relationship forever, there's a willingness to confront the inner demons as well, and say, well, if I'm going to live with you forever, I'm going to have to tell you something.
Yeah, definitely. Commitment changes the whole thing, right?
Yeah. So I think that's the thing with, if you don't have that commitment, it's hard to really express like that, and then you just need to sugarcoat it a bit.
Yes, indeed. Wow, yeah, that's big. That's it.
Yeah.
I just think it's all about commitment, and the person being, you have to wake up next to them every day. You better make it, better make sure you get on with that person.
Yeah.
Do what you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about commitment and love. I think if you didn't have that kind of strong commitment, then you won't give it the time and space that it needs.
Yeah. Not just about commitment and love, but commitment to love.
That's right. True.
Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who's got anger issues? And I don't know if we got to this point yet, but I was just thinking about people who are not dealing with their anger. What can it do? What have you seen? What do you think pent up anger does to the body?
Oh, well. Well, there's that whole German new medicine idea where the feelings, create all sorts of things. It's a massive amount of stress. I think heart attacks, a big part of that is that. But just boiling, the whole idea of cancer coming out of anger itself.
Okay.
I think my own cancer, I think, came out of that anger itself for making silly decisions.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say there? About, we just need to come to terms. It's about being willing to allow ourselves being angry, and to let ourselves. Someone came up with the idea of being patient with the patient. The patient. If you're stressed emotionally, then you're diseased and diseased. and so you need to be patient with yourself. And but you know, it's the whole thing of not feeling guilty for feeling angry, not feeling afraid of feeling angry, and then feeling angry, allowing yourself to be okay feeling vulnerable, so that you can get underneath the anger. Because when you're feeling vulnerable, anger happens when you want to defend yourself, so you're not willing to feel vulnerable.
Yes.
So that's one of the key things, is allowing ourselves to feel vulnerable. And then we can come out the other side. And because if you're not dealing with anger kind of hubbles and bubbles under the surface all the time. Whereas if you deal with anger and get comfortable with it, anger's a rare thing.
Yeah, it's important to deal with it
in a relationship anyway. But you know, in terms of the world at the moment,
it's also important in terms of the world to apply some wisdom about what you'll allow into your world and what you won't.
Yeah,
you know, we don't need to know everything. We also, I've seen a few things doing the rounds to this last week that was around 3-4 years ago. You know, this one video where you can slap the person's arm if they're having a heart attack. This was a person in a movie theater in China or Korea somewhere, and was having a heart attack, and they slapped the hand and the person came to. And then the other one was the EBS. The EBS is going to be coming through, and I was like, please do me a favor. I've heard that EBS story for so long. Stop telling me this.
EBS, I haven't.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, EBS means the emergency broadcasting siren. That's our system. Where
alert on your phone.
Yeah, no, but this is a bit different, and I think we've been getting EBSs anyway. But this is a little bit different. They talked about the white hats putting out an EBS and basically running a program on all TVs for 8 hours where nothing else will be played but that. But it sounds like the mainstream media, you know, when they spend so much time on a supposed emergency, like that earthquake out in the sea. Do you remember 2021? I think August 2021. That started at 6 o'clock in the morning and finished at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and got people so worked up about it that they were telling them to get their bags ready to take off when it was necessary if you were near the coastline. And you know, half the people did not even know it was happening. So I feel like, I don't mean to digress, but I feel like we have the EBS. I felt like that something like that happened when we had on the 14th of February, when we were having the storm, or the 13th or 14th. There was a storm where everybody was inside, everybody was batten down the hatches, no, 20 cars in the Pack and Save car park in Botany, all that. So I don't want to be hearing about these things again. See, that kind of irritates me. It doesn't make me angry, it irritates me. Maybe anger and irritation are linked, because I just think
there's the whole idea there's no like a small anger is just as much as a big anger.
That's right. Yeah. So maybe irritation is a small anger.
They're all equally destructive to your sense of peace.
True. And so therefore, I'm just deciding, as I was saying, people be wise, apply wisdom to what you're going to allow into your world. Make sure you're fine. Do the things that make necessary for you to be comfortable and safe and healthy and happy. And if everybody does that, it will all flow out to each other. The energy will carry that, even if you're not having a direct contact with people. Yes, back to anger. So, what were we saying here now? So we were talking about now I've come to, let's talk about the misuse of Ahimsah. Do you want to tell us more about that, or is there something else I didn't ask you to get to this point?
Well, I think I think it's the big thing is that when something's happening that isn't right, you need to make a stand. Because if no one else is making a stand around you, then and you can see it, then it's up to you to make a stand.
Right. So this is the Ahimsah concept. Yeah.
The misuse of Ahimsah is not allowing divine fury when you feel it.
Wow, that
And
is so important.
yeah, and divine fury, you can always tell you're not blaming anyone, but you are standing up for people.
Yes.
And so you're standing up for something that's been perpetrated on someone else or yourself or the population in general, because you can see it happening, and someone needs to point it out. And it's not about beating anybody up, but it's about bringing light to the truth that's happening and making sure that people get that. And that's what's so frustrating with our politicians at the moment, is that they just aren't listening. We can be as furious as we want, and they just say things. That's just more infuriating.
So the Ahimsah part, I want to come back to that a little bit.
Mhm.
I have experienced in my life in this last 3 years so many people that really annoy me.
Mhm.
Easier word than anger, but I mean, because I've had to take a back seat on expressing how I truly feel.
Yeah.
When I can see something is wrong and I'm standing up for it, and people are like, it's not my business. I don't want to know about that. I don't want to bring that into my space. And I feel like, what in the world are people doing where they cannot apply this concept? Because even if we say we don't want it in our space, and we don't want to stand up for something, we don't want to address it, we don't want to know it's happening, it's actually not going away.
Mm.
And I just had something like this happen yesterday, that again, there was all this, dare I say, third dimensional control put into a situation. And here was me like feeling guided, and I'm like flying, and I'm like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And this was not political. This was like something esoteric, because I felt guided to it. And then I had somebody come in there and put complete brakes, because it does not fall within the platform of what they know. And it does not, I mean, it just didn't fit into the model. So it cannot be allowed forward. And this coming back to the anger thing, or the Ahimsa thing, it was again, we want to stand up for what's right because we see the need for this, but you don't want to do this because you feel it should not come into your space, but it's happening, you know. And once it was not political, but it supports anybody who needs to get through this time, who are affected by the politics, and we are all affected by the politics, you
Yeah, we
know.
are.
And I'm like, no, please stop doing this thing of we need to be holier than thou, and keep things in this way, because you're confining us. And this is confinement that we don't need. It's just another small, tiny way of doing what the powers that be are doing. No,
Yeah.
let's not talk about that here, because it's not the right time and space. This is not the platform for it. I was so annoyed,
Yeah.
because I thought to myself, don't call me into these meetings if you think I am not going to be myself and say what my guidance system is telling me. I am not, just don't expect that I won't be me. I have to be me. And
Yeah.
now I'm being shut down because I am me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking, and the I am me means that, well, you know, if we went ahead and did what I was saying to do, we're going to start something that's going to be great for humanity. We are coming into our soul's purpose to stand up here and do that part that we have come into this time and space to do, the people that were in this group. And then we had the coordinator of the group suddenly coming in and just tossing it and saying no, because she does not want to be dealing with anything that looks uncomfortable. But I'm thinking, how can you not? How can you not be out there wanting to? Why do you need to sugarcoat everything? Especially that it concerns the greater good and the collective and humanity and all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that really frustrating with people at the moment who are deciding, no, I don't want to know. I'm going to bury my head in the sand and hope it goes away.
Yeah. Well, people are scared.
Oh, okay.
They're seriously scared, and they can't. And what if you bring their attention to what the bigger issue is? It's more scary.
Yeah, yeah, I understand being afraid, but
Yeah,
I don't understand, and maybe scared is the reason for why. I'll just turn the other way and look like it's not happening, because you know what? If I do that, then perhaps it'll just not even come near me.
yeah,
I will generate positive energy to a point where I will not bring anything near me.
yeah.
So
You'll see that is one of the traps of what's called the New Age thought or positive
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
is that you forget to be real.
yes,
And when you forget to be real, then you can't respond to the real threat that's out there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is one of the other things. There's so many little loopholes that take us back into the matrix. And I think that even in the esoteric community, that is another thing that will take us back into the matrix if we don't realize. If I say I don't want to stand up for what's right, and I'm just going to keep my own to myself, then I'm saying I'm just going to be an island.
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't care.
Mm.
For me, I can't do that, because I don't need to go out there and talk to anybody or create any protest or do whatever, but I can stand up for what's right, and I can say, well, okay, which way do I go on this?
Mhm.
Where do I stand on it? Love is the platform. If we're operating from love, then we have no choice but to stand up for what's right. So
Yeah,
anyway, that's what I think.
that's
So
right.
right, sorry.
And
What
then
else?
there'll be people that will come with you on that journey, and there are people that just can't.
That's okay. That's
Yeah,
okay. It's just, I just say to people, and I'm going to just say this now because you can tell I have a bee in my bonnet. I'm just going to say to those people, don't tell me you're awakening and you're on the awakening journey. That awakening journey that you're on is, we're not on the same one. So perhaps we just don't need to be even talking to each other.
yeah,
I don't know. I just feel like, we're coming to a stage where, I don't know about you, but me, I meet people more on the same, who have the same thought patterns as I do. I'm attracting people that are like-minded in my world
hmm
more than less, right? I
yeah,
don't have all kinds of people in my world anymore. In
hmm
this last week, I have spoken to people that I never thought could ever talk to me about stuff concerning the government and wake up about, vaccinations and whatever. And I was having such a conversation last week with a friend of mine who moved to Australia, and she's Roman Catholic, and she was telling me stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, what has happened? We have no choice but to wake up. That's it.
yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Yes. So,
And,
anything
and
else you want to share with us?
yeah, I think one more thing was just how the victimhood and grievance industry is being used. There's our own relationship to what makes us angry and personal relationship and all that stuff, but then there's this outside forces that are purposely trying to make people angry.
Yes.
And the WEF guy Klaus Schwab said we're heading into an angrier world. And I think that's by their intention. They want an angrier world. They
Yes.
want to divide and conquer. And so there are people that are more comfortable being angry than others. And um, some of us get angry because we get afraid of something and then we just knee jerk into anger. Other people, so you can, that whole thing around how the COVID restrictions came in and people were, shutting their families out, and all that stuff came out of fear driving them to be angry at people who weren't, say, vaccinated, and said, well, they wouldn't allow them in their house, even if they were their mum and dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Mothers
And
did it to their children as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and their children. And so that's one way we can be motivated into anger. The other one is through the idea of being a victim and grievances. And that's where we call it the grievance industry now. The Maori, the colonization. They can only think of the bad things on colonization. They can't think of the good things. It's like those don't exist. we
Mm.
we need to get over ourselves for what happened in the past. And someone once said, if you give a man a grudge, you've given him a friend for life.
True.
And so we need to be aware. I was talking at a co-governance debate a while ago, and someone asked me, well, what am I really afraid of? And I said, because they said, well, what are you afraid of co-governance for? And what I had said to them was, I was afraid is that people are being used. People are being, told that they're buying this lie that they've been mistreated over the generations. Everyone mistreated each other over the generations. I mean, it's just, that was life. Yeah. We are waking up to not doing that. And that's why slavery stopped and all that stuff. So that was the benefit of colonization, is slavery stopped.
Yes.
And what am I trying to say here? So that whole idea where
we're talking about the debate.
Yeah, the debate where basically my main fear is that people don't see that they're being used. They say that they're against white colonization, completely not seeing that their mind's being colonized by a globalist thought, and the globalists telling us that those you were treated badly in the past, so you need to be angry about that.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to, the people that are comfortable being angry, they're making them more angry by making grievances a festering boil.
Yeah, wow.
And so that whole victimhood thing that's playing out, that comes through the gender thing, the race thing, the colonization, and then there's the religious ones like the political Islam and stuff like that, that if you don't believe like they do, then they'll chop your head off, Yeah. So the whole thing where the elements that are being played to actually create division in society. And my concern is that they just don't see that. And it's like how to wake people like that up to the fact. And I tried to share that at this meeting. They did a debate on co-governance, because they really wrecked the Stop Co-Governance meeting in Ory that I helped organize. And the Marae had some feedback on that, and then decided they'd do a panel discussion on co-governance, pros and the cons. And so we all went along there, and but they only had the people standing up to do the anti-co-governance was actually pro-co-governance. So they never had anyone who was actually going to stand up for the other side. Yeah. So they invited people from the audience. So I stood up and sat in that place. And the main point I was trying to get is that for people to see how their grievances were being festered and fostered by people that didn't have their good in mind, and actually buying into that, they were being controlled by the very people they say they didn't want to be controlled by.
I want to say that I've recently started to see that. I've had other people talk about this, and then you said a few things, and it made me stop and start to think about that. And interestingly enough, when it came to colonization of New Zealand, I had a friend who is a Maori lady who sent me some stuff that made me realize, oh, I don't know everything about the colonization. Well, I didn't think I knew everything, but it just gave me some better understanding. Having come from colonies myself, because my ancestors came from India, and they settled in South Africa, and having been somebody who's experienced apartheid and all of those things, I am starting to see more and more how those things are being used right now in this time and space to divide and segregate people. Because you're right, if they can keep people angry, if they can keep people hating the other race group or hating certain race groups or whatever, then that means we are in captivity. They've got us where they want us. One of the things that really struck me was that Black Lives Matter movement that started then with George. Well, it hadn't started then, it had been around for a while. But what happened with the whole situation with George Floyd? And that in itself spoke volumes about how what had happened, because I don't know if you've watched the documentary that the documentary movie that Candace Owens has done. Candace Owens is I think she's a YouTuber or a blogger.
Yeah,
And
she's a politician. She's in the Republic, isn't she?
She wasn't before that. I don't think she was
Okay,
before
yeah.
that. She was
Yeah,
more like a
great,
blogger or something, right?
fantastic mind.
Fantastic mind. And she
Yeah.
did this. If you ever get to watch it, I encourage watching that. And you suddenly started to see how what people saw and what actually happened was so different. It was just used to create protest, anger, fear, and just cause disruption and distraction. And the people were used to do that.
Mm.
And that movement had supposedly got a lot of money because a lot of people donated money to it. None of it apparently went to George Floyd's family. Nothing went to them apparently.
Yeah.
And I mean, what anger was what I suppose compassion brought money into it, but anger was what kept those protests going for all that time.
Yeah.
So
and that's where people need to get a handle on, is this anger justified? Am I being manipulated to feel
that's
angry?
Right. Yeah.
And it's easy to work it out once you see it. If you get over being, a victim. A lady called Edith Eger, she did a book called The Gift. She was a Holocaust survivor, and another book called The Choice, I think. She said, victimhood is like rigor mortis for the mind.
True. You can't disagree with it, right? You can't disagree with something like that, because then you just live in that mode. We've all had some kind of victimhood in a small form. I mean, nothing is ever just left for it to be intense. It's small. It starts small, and if you don't deal with it, it's like anger. It starts small, and if you don't deal with it, then it becomes more and more as things you keep adding to your things you're angry about, and you're not expressing it, and then you blow up, and then it might have other consequences.
Yeah.
So yes, very, very good conversation. I like this one. There's such a lot. All the topics we've had so far, there's so many angles to them, right?
There are, and our emotions are our life. Life is an emotional process more than a mental process.
Yes.
And we're either in the flow with our emotions and using them to identify what's going on and help us to move ahead, or we're blocking them.
Yes.
We're only allowing certain bits, or we're more comfortable with some than others, but we have to be comfortable with the whole kaleidoscope of them.
We do.
And that's what makes life life.
Yeah. It's I've got to say, it's a little bit tough to be a human in this time and space, right? And because we've come here, and a lot of us, we've come here, and we've come here with everything we need before we got here. We were well kitted out before we came into being physically here, and then we came here, and then we had all those people around us that were meant to protect us and help us be our best selves decide to program us without even meaning to, without realizing they were. We understand that. And then we've had this first 7 years of our lives that we had a lot of programming, and then we went to school, and then we had more programming. And now we get to the stage wherever we are, however many years later on, that we awaken to the fact that we've been programmed, to now deprogram. And I tell you what, I find that a challenge in itself. So I'm just like, what did you think you were doing when you came here, Rose? Why did you choose to come here? So thank you so much for this time today. I appreciate it. And
I appreciate talking with you as well.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So we are taking our let's call it an early spring break in the Southern Hemisphere. We're going to be going, we're not actually doing any recordings, everybody, for the next few weeks. So this one will go online on Friday. It'll go live on Friday or online. And we will be away for about 3-4 weeks. And the reason for it, I've asked for the recess. But I think it's time for reflection, and we hope that when we come back, there will be a better, not a better, but it will be operating from a refreshed platform. I need the space. So, you know, I've asked Dr. Darag for it. So that's why we will be taking a recess for a few weeks. Yeah. So anyway, do you want to say anything to anyone before we go and take our recess, Darag?
Yeah, there was one other thing I thought of adding to that piece. You know, when people are angry with because of grievances and because of victimhood, it's about letting them feel angry, but also making sure you stand up and say, no, that's not right.
Good.
And so it's allowing our own the divine fury at that point to come out. And you know, when Babaji was having arguments with people, when it was quite often they'd be yelling and I wish I'd spoken Hindi, because I could all I could see was the interaction with not actually seeing the detail. And but you got that people were really furious with him, and they just treated him like, you know, they laid into him like crazy. And he would often just sit there and chuckle or laugh, and then he just, once they'd finished, he would just straight back at them. And that's what we need to learn to do with people that are playing victims, when they're actually being victimized by the people that are manipulating them. And it's up to us not to buy into their victimhood and feel guilty about it, but to actually stand for truth at that point. And it's particularly, you know, like this election coming up, I think that's a big issue coming up, is where people are, you know, the whole Bud Light blowback that happened. I don't know if you're aware of that, but you know, it was they did an ad with a transgender person, and they lost they got a lot of feedback on that. And so it's like the world's having a Bud Light. The Georgia Maloney, who won in Italy elections, there's a whole movement coming where we've been told that we are the problem for so long, and we need to take a stand and say, no, that's not right.
Because it isn't.
Yeah, that isn't right.
It's not right. And yeah, it isn't. And other people have been enjoying the benefits and doing whatever they want to do, and they are the reasons for most things happening, but they're blaming humanity for it. The rest of us, you know, the 98% of us that are ordinary people, supposedly. So yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Darag. Thank you for that. Take care. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.